What's poppin', fellow nerds? Today I'm going to be going over my UlforceVeedramon deck profile for BT5. So I actually think this deck got significantly better in this format, but I will get into our list and show you guys how this deck got way better for BT5. Also, reminder, giveaway for this, link in the description. Make sure to enter it if you have not entered it. Alright, and we of course are starting off with our Digitama. So we have 4 Demi-Vmons and 1 Upamon. We do like drawing, and we rarely ever attack if we do not have jamming. So we're playing this one when attacking once per turn if you have jamming. Draw 1 card, seems pretty good. And then Upamon attacking once per turn if your opponent has a Digimon with no sources, draw 1. Essentially the same thing as your Demi-V, except for a little less consistent. But definitely still comes up quite a bit now with this new deck. And starting off for our rookies, you know how it is. 4 of the best blue rookie in the game, jamming Vmon. This card's stupid. We're never not going to play 4 of this card in a blue aggro deck. I don't see a reason why you would. But yeah, 4 of this little bugger. And then 4 more Vmon. Go figure, right? This is the one that's inheritables once per turn. During your turn, if this Digimon becomes unsuspended, draw 1. So when you're womboing with your Ulforce, this is when you just draw an extra card. So I actually would not play this card if it wasn't a searchable rookie, due to your Rina Shinamiya, or Shinamaya, however you say her name. Because it's like, this is kind of win more as far as like the draw power, because you're only unsuspending when you like digivolve into an Arrow Veedramon or your Ulforce is womboing. So honestly, I'd rather play a different rookie, but unfortunately this is the only other searchable rookie for this deck right now, but that will change whenever the structure deck comes out. And I don't think I would play this in Ulforce, at least not as a 4 of, I don't think. But we'll see after the structure deck comes out how I feel about it. And our last rookie, we are running 4 Gabumon. This is the on-play trigger draw 1, 1000 DP. Gets popped like crazy if you're playing against Lord Nightmon. But you don't put this thing on the field if you're playing against Lord Nightmon. You digivolve in the breeding area. I would probably, unless I'm digging for something, I would not play this against a Lord Nightmon deck that's already got their setup kind of going, because he just gets popped from Pikmon and Koromon. Like, they don't have to do anything else but attack. But against everything else, he's not bad. It's a little harder for other decks to just pop you for free besides yellow, but very good just to dig into your combo pieces, because this is a combo deck. And that's it for our rookies. We are playing 12. And on to our champions. We are playing 4 jamming Veedramon. His effect is your turn. While you have a blue Tamer in play, this Digimon gains jamming. You are going to have a blue Tamer in play almost every single time you have this card in play, so he just has jamming. So he's just a level 4 jamming target, so you can draw for your Demi-Vs and whatnot. Pretty good card. He's our searchable level 4. Very nice to have him. And then we are also playing 4 Koalamon, Soelamon. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. I've never seen the show or played the game that this thing is from, so I don't know how to actually say it, but the 1 to Digivolve blocker that Blue got access to this set. This is amazing because 1, it satisfies your blocker, and 2, it lets you turbo into your bigger stuff that actually does things. And our last 2 champions, we actually cut our X-Vmons for the BT1 Ikakumon. His inheritable is your turn. This Digimon can't be blocked by your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards. The way I built this deck is you don't actually have any removal. So if someone drops like a Craniumon or something, or just a huge blocker on the field, you don't want them to just be able to block your Ulforce and kill it. So having an out to that is definitely necessary for those kinds of matchups, because that's a very slow deck. So you can probably just chill there until you draw into this card, which you draw tons of cards in blue, so you'll get to this card. And then once you get to this card, they can't do anything but sit there and cry while you wombo through their security. And that is it for our champions. We are playing 10 of them. And on to our ultimates. Obviously, my favorite ultimate in Ulforce. This thing is busted. His when digivolving effect is when you have your blue Tamer in play, unsuspend 1 of your blue Digimon, including himself. And then his inheritable is your turn. When Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, it gains jamming for the turn. So it lets your Ulforce just have jamming, just go pop, 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 pop. But definitely good. My main goal, my MO, is to get him under my Ulforce every single game. I think the only deck that I wouldn't just like always want him to be under my Ulforce is specifically Rookie Rush, because you're bigger than I think almost anything they play besides the random ones that are playing Valderarm or whatever now. But I would take that chance and just but yeah, fantastic card. This is the alt art from the BT5 pre-release. Very pretty card. Very happy to get this guy in a foil. And then our other ultimate, we are playing a new card from BT5, Digimon. His effect is when Digivolving, trash a bottom Digivolution card of all of your opponent's Digimon. That's okay, we don't mind that. But his inheritable is your turn. If your opponent has Digimon with no Digivolution cards in play, this Digimon gains security attack +1. So if you have an Ulforce, sometimes you're a little pressed for time, and you don't have enough time to set up enough Tamers to swing through 5 security. But if you have this guy underneath, you only have to swing 4 times as opposed to 6 times to kill them with Ulforce. It's pretty easy to swing that many times in this deck, and we'll show you guys how when we get to there. That is it for our ultimates. We're playing 8. And on to our megas. We are playing 4 UlforceVeedramon. Duh. For those of you that don't know, his effect is your turn when one of your blue Tamers becomes suspended. Unsuspend this Digimon, not once per turn. And then your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, gain 1 memory. Which is pretty cool. You just get to gain a free memory while you go into your Wombo. But the main goal of this deck is to get blue Tamers in play and just go and just run through your opponent's security. And I actually added 2 megas to this deck. You can probably guess what they are, but it's 2 Hexablaumon. So I didn't want to play this card in this deck. I honestly think that Hexablaumon is kind of bad. It's good against slower decks that don't really have access to a lot of removal, but it like hard loses to fast decks and decks that have access to removal. Like they're just gonna continuously out it. And then once you run out of Hexablaumons, you just lose, because that's like your main win condition in Hexablaumon is to just have him stick on the field and just floodgate your opponent. But for those of you that don't know, his effect is when attacking, trash up to 2 Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. Then if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards in play, this Digimon gains jamming for the turn. And then all turns, your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can't attack or block. So the reason why we're playing this, in addition to our Ulforce, is for those situations where you need to do this to stop you from losing. It's basically a panic button if your opponent gets out in front of you a little too much to where you can't kill them quick enough. That's the only reason I'm playing this card. It's not the main goal of my deck. I do not want to just drop this and be like, alright dude, figure it out. Because most tier 1 decks will figure it out, and they'll figure it out pretty consistently just to out this guy. It's not hard. Yellow can pop him pretty easily, and purple can pop him. Like, it's not hard for this guy to get outed by any of the tier 1 decks. He is literally just there to buy you a couple of turns. That's it. And once you have bought those turns with your Hexablau, you have enough time to build an Ulforce in your raising area with a couple more Tamers. And then they out this guy, and then you come out with Ulforce and just murder them. That is it for our megas. We're playing 6. And on to our level 7s. So this is another new card from BT5. These are the same card, just 2 different alt arts. This is the Blitz Omni, and this guy actually made this deck way better. So his effect is when Digivolving Blitz, and that means it can attack when your opponent has 1 or more memory, so he can swing even though the Digivolve actually puts the memory on your opponent's side of the field. And then his effect is when Digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. And then there is another effect, but it's not while you're playing. I'll go ahead and read it though. All turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this Digimon or return it to its owner's hand or deck, you may prevent it from leaving play by trashing a level 6 Digimon card in this card's Digivolution cards. So he protects himself from removal, but the turn you play this guy, you're not concerned about that. This is the win button. This is an extra swing with your Ulforce, because you just swing out with your Ulforce for how many ever swings you get. And typically your opponent's like, oh man, I'm safe, I have another turn. And you're like, no you don't. Digivolve, unsuspend, swing for game. I do this pretty consistently with this deck. You really only need 2. 3's kind of cloggy. You are typically going to see this in every single game, and the games you don't see it, it's not really a huge deal. You don't need it to win, but it does make winning a lot easier. And onto our Tamers, we are playing quite a few. So we are playing 4 arena. So this is why our rookie count, our champion count, our ultimate count are all very low, is because she searches 8 rookies, 4 champions, 4 ultimates, and 4 megas in her deck. So it's kind of hard to brick with this deck because you want to put her on the field, and she also searches for those pieces you might be missing. So it's not really a big deal playing 12, 10, 8, and then 6 megas. But her effect is your turn. When one of your blue Digimon attacks, you may suspend this Tamer to give that Digimon 1000 DP for the turn. And then on play, reveal 3 cards from the top of your deck. Add 1 Digimon card with V in its name among them to your hand. Place your remaining cards on the bottom deck in any order. Securities activate the card's main effect. So this is your searcher. And then she taps whenever you swing with your blue Digimon to give them 1000. And sometimes that just lets you swing over stuff randomly whenever you're playing kind of a grindy game. You can just tap her and just make your blue Digimon bigger, even when you don't have an Ulforce out, and that actually comes into play quite a bit. But she's very good. I do like her. And then we did bump the Tai Kamiya up to 4. I was only playing 2 of this last, I believe, 1.5 format, which is BT3. But we did have to bump him up in this format, so I'll go into the explanation and then I'll explain why I'm playing this card. So he's another blue Tamer, and his effect is main if you have a Digimon with Veedramon in its name, not V, Veedramon. So you have to have either your champion, your ultimate, or your mega on the field for him to come into play. But you can suspend this Tamer and activate one of the following's effect. You can either draw 1, or one of your Digimon gets 1000 DP for the turn. He's not as good as the other ones. The only good thing about him is he only costs 2 to play. Drawing extra cards is kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's cool to have, but really you're only playing this guy because he's another cheap Tamer to put into play. And then our last Tamer, which is another new card, which whenever I saw this card and read it, this is what made me want to build Ulforce for BT5 format, is this busted card. So we were playing 4 Sora and Joe. So, for those of you that don't know, this effect is start of your turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards in play, gain 2 memory. And then your turn, when you attack with a blue Digimon, you may suspend this Tamer to trash up to 2 Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. So, fun fact. So you can actually, when you attack with a blue Digimon, you can suspend this with no targets on your opponent's field. So even if they don't even have a Digimon in play, you can still suspend this for cost because of how the Digimon card game works. So this card is always a suspendable Tamer when you attack. So it's immediately has many of these as you have on the field. That's an extra swing for each one with your Ulforce, which is really dumb. And also, it's very easy because this card plays into itself because it removes 2 Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. And then at the start of your turn, you get 2 extra memory. So if you just have one of these out, it's basically like a memory setter if it's live because you're going to go to 3. And that's only if they set you to 1. If you have multiples of these out, it gets really, really bad for your opponent because if you give an Ulforce player or any blue aggro deck a bunch of memory, they can probably either just kill you on that turn or they can set up to kill you on the following turn. You can't just give an aggro deck like 7 memory and expect it to be okay, which happens pretty consistently with cards like this because whenever they're outing your stuff that you have to put on the field, like Hexablaumon, they're typically going to have to give you a little bit too much memory, and then if you have some of these out and they're live, you just, like, I've been maxed out to 10 several times playing this deck, because your opponents can't help but play into this, because it, like, there's no way around this. Like, you're going to tap it consistently whenever you're swinging with your jamming guys, like your Veemons you get to tap because you're not going to die. If they don't have a blocker, you just get to remove their sources for free. But very good card. This is what made me decide that this is another format that Ulforce can be good. And that is it for our Tamers. We were actually playing 12 Tamers, which is more than you'd probably play in a Shine Greymon deck. So I actually originally, when I built this, I was playing just 4 Arena and 4 Joe and Sora, and I wasn't playing Tai because I think it's the weakest one because you can't suspend it on attack declaration. Which if you guys have seen my previous Ulforce build, you know that I want to be able to immediately unsuspend my Ulforce so it gains jamming on the first swing, and Tai does not let you do that, but these two do. But the reason why I'm playing the ties is because if you'll notice, I'm not playing any Hammer Sparks in this deck. And that's because purple is playing Digimon, and any decks that have access to the memory blockers, like green, they're going to be playing their memory blocking Digimon, whatever it is. And you don't have any destruction in this deck, so you can't out those cards. So for consistency purposes and just as a meta call, I just cut my Hammer Sparks and just put in 4 of these guys. Because you don't really need the Hammer Sparks. Yes, they do come in handy when you have them and they're live. But I would rather just know that I'm never going to have a dead card against decks like that are playing the Digimons and stuff, and just play this guy instead. But that's it. Like, if you're not expecting anybody to play memory blockers, I would cut the 4 tie and just play 4 Hammer Sparks in their place. And that's a change I would make. Alright, now let's get into what I think made this deck significantly better. So, obviously, right now, if you are pressed for time against your opponent, you can actually just kill them with 2 Tamers on the field, which I think is really dumb, and you shouldn't be able to do that with Ulforce. But so what you do is, you just have 2 Tamers on the field, doesn't matter what they are. Honestly, in situations like this, you'd actually prefer 2 Rena, because she gives you an extra 1000 DP and you don't have jamming when you have BT5 underneath. But it doesn't actually matter if you are... So, when your opponent puts a lot of pressure on you, sometimes you are forced to YOLO with this deck, which is high risk, high reward. But that's really what this deck is all about, is just aggroing and just swinging repeatedly into your opponent's security. If Ulforce dies, he dies. I mean, that's what's going to happen sometimes. But live by the sword, die by the sword. There's not much else you can do in this deck. So we'll just pretend this was in play a couple of turns just because the BT5 needs to be alive. So what you do is, whenever you're forced to YOLO, so with this on board and this in your hand, you can check 8 security technically. Which obviously you only need to check 5 and then have an additional swing, but this is an 8 security check right here if your Ulforce doesn't die to any security checks. So you swing with Ulforce, boom. What I would do if I swung on this first swing and my opponent didn't have a Digimon with no sources is I would actually let this be dead on the first swing, and I would tap the Arena to give it an extra 1000. You're only checking 1 security for 12,000. He'll unsuspend himself. You'll gain a memory from his effect, and then you'll draw from the Veedramon, whatever, that's not important. And then you swing a second time, and this is when you tap Sora and Joe, and you remove the bottom 2 Digivolution sources off of a Digimon. It's probably going to mean it doesn't have any more sources. BT5 immediately becomes active, and now you're checking 2 security on this swing, and then you unsuspend because your Sora and Joe suspended, so that's 2 checks for 12k, and now you've checked 3 security, and then you swing a third time, and now you've checked 2 more security for 12k, and that's 5 checks right there. And then you Digivolve into Omnimon. His effect activates, he unsuspends himself, and then he has Blitz, and you can just finish the game like that. Pretty devastating, and it's like you can get this out pretty quickly against a lot of decks. I think Ulforce definitely has a place in the meta. So there are a couple of reasons why I think this deck has a place in the meta. One, I think any aggro deck has a chance to do something and shake up some tournaments, because a lot of the tier 1 decks actually require a little bit of setup. Purple Lilith obviously takes a little bit to set up. Once they get there though. But if you can push the tempo a little bit, the more than they're liking, you definitely have a shot against them. Yellow, unless they draw the nuts on you, you can actually match their speed pretty consistently, because they're not as a power, like, the power level is definitely higher than Yellow or Greymon, but the aggressiveness is not the same. For one, their Lord Knight does not swing twice like Yellow or Greymon. Yellow or Greymon could consistently swing twice and then drop double Bushi, and that's 4 checks right there. They could just kill you out of nowhere if you have 3 or fewer security. Lord Nightmon can't really do that as consistently unless they are playing a Yellow or Greymon in their deck, which a lot of them are not. They can completely wipe your board and things like that, but if you can just build up in the raising, and play a couple of Tamers while they don't kill you, you can just come out, bring your dude out, bring your Ulforce out, and just kill them really quickly before they even get a chance to do anything. This deck has a very good matchup against Hexablow, which is not a tier 1 deck. I don't think that deck is actually very good. It is definitely rogue. Like I said, like, it's not good against tier 1 decks because they can consistently out it. If you know how to play around Hexablow, it's not even a big deal. In this deck specifically, I would just sit there while they think they are floodgating me, and I would just play my Tamers. And then once I had enough Tamers to kill them, I would just Digivolve on top of my UlforceVeedramon, and then I can just attack freely because I have a source underneath, and you can just kill them on that turn. Decks that can either OTK you, or decks that can just consistently out Digimon every single turn, have a very good matchup against Hexablowmon, which unfortunately for them, that's pretty much all of the good decks right now. Do one or the other. But I think these two cards right here are what make this deck very good this format. They make other decks good, obviously. I think this is by far the best dual tamer we got in this set. There are only 3 of them. This one is flat out busted, I think. I think it's the best one up until we get the black dual tamer in whatever set it comes out in, but that one's about the same level as consistently live as this one is. But that is the deck profile. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like this video if you liked this deck profile, and obviously subscribe to the channel if you like what you see and want to come back for more. But until next time, see ya.